Thank you very much indeed, Bruce. I suppose just a quick mention for Sean Brady, who was mentioned in Bruce's presentation. He will be speaking just after 4 o'clock. So, as I said, we've got some great speakers coming in the afternoon. Now, we've got some good questions in. As always, we try and give priority to people who are pushing the questions in. But just, gentlemen, if you can all grab your mics, please. I'll kind of do it in reverse order, but if we're going to maybe Air first, Chris, question that just came in. But how important was cultural change within Air in the context of implementing your 27001?
I suppose, as I mentioned, in terms of Aircom, we're around an awful long time. We grew from the origins of P&T, so there was a very much in terms of I suppose an attitude that was cemented in the way that things were done, and that was bred into our culture over a period of time. So when you bring something like ISO into an organisation like that, it's not just the people you've got to change, it's the culture in order to adopt it and for it to be continuously ongoing at all times. So it's not about forcing it down people's neck in terms of that this is something that we've got to do, it's what the business has got to do. You've got to show the benefit to the internal customers in terms of, I mentioned about the reduction of the number of incidents that we're seeing on the back of having this structure in place. So it's reducing the workload of the employees in terms of, running around previously in terms of, this person was responsible for that. I know where that file is located. How are we going to manage this? And that's what it's done. They've bought into it because they've seen the end benefit to them. That the majority of employees are concerned about their future within the company. They're concerned about the results of the company. But when you're trying to implement something like this, it's, what's the personal benefit to me in terms of my workload and my job? I don't want extra stress. I don't want extra responsibilities. So it's assigning extra responsibilities, but will actually reduce their workload and bring benefits to them in the end.
Thank you. Just moving on to John Ryan. Just a question from the floor. Where do you think the next security issues will come from?
Any chance of an easy question? No?
It's a bit open.
Yeah, I mean, it's evolving continuously. I think the thing we got to recognise is that the threat actors are organised. They're very organised. More money now is made by the mafia from cybercrime than it is from drugs. So the environment is continually changing. In the last month, last 6 weeks, last 8 weeks, ransomware was the key item in Ireland. But that had been prevalent in California and the US 2 years earlier. So the hackers will follow the easy targets, and they will change their philosophy and their approach depending on how everybody reacts. And if you're slow in reacting, you will be hit by the threats that are maybe 18 months old, 2 years old, because you're still vulnerable to those threats. So I'm other than saying that it's going to continually change, it's very hard to predict what the next mechanisms will be. In fact, we're seeing probably a change in some respects in the fact that the threats are now morphing into being technology-based, but technology supported by old-fashioned letters. So I talked this morning to somebody who mentioned that they got a letter, physical letter. Anybody see those anymore? Those physical letter from their supplier saying, we're changing our bank account, we're moving banks, and this is the new bank account. Headed paper, signed by the financial controller, and then they get a follow-up phone call saying, did you get our letter? We need to get this done immediately because of the payment process, etc. That was a scam. So they will take any measure that they feel works to extract the cash out of you, and I think that's what we need to be conscious of. It's a 360 view of life, not just looking at your technology platforms. It's how your technology platforms interact and work with the rest of your processes and people.
Very good, thank you. And we've plenty of questions, so we'll keep it moving. But good to hear one of our next speakers on POST has a role to play still in this area. Just moving on to Gary, with all these large volumes of data now in the Republic of Ireland, how do we exploit that opportunity?
Probably clarity, and that's part of what we're trying to say, is that the data that sits in the actual centres is where the magic is. It's where the opportunities are. To exploit it, what we have to do is we have to identify that there are, for every job that's created in a data centre, there's probably 12 to 15 generated outside. That's the first thing. The second thing is we need people to actually start to look at their own organisations and champion the data case. But up to this point, a lot of people say, well, we're not a Microsoft, we're not a Google, we're not a Amazon, etc. Well, actually, the fastest growing sectors year on year of the generation of data is pharmaceuticals, life sciences, and healthcare. And it's people in that industry will just tell you that's because of the genome, because we're moving towards a era where rather than generic drugs, we're going to have personalized drugs. So every one of those has a data set that's probably 10 times the size of what the companies themselves have on their drugs. So it's seeking clarity. The opportunity is actually in the mining of the data, not in the actual mines themselves. That's the opportunity.
Thank you. And moving on to Bruce, I suppose a question for you around Vodafone. It has a long history, but how important were communications among staff? But given obviously Eire made a comment on it already, you might also comment on mobile device security as well.
Well, it's always an interesting one for our customers who regularly come into us and ask questions about how do you guys do it? There was a time, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, when we had a slight case of the collars over our shoes, because of the fact that we were looking at this and we were working with various vendors on making sure that we did the best possible for the global approach. So after that, so that was like about a 5-year point that we started looking at how we're going to do this with our customers. We started working with partners to get solutions out on the and that's where we are today, working with partners that we deliver. So things like mobile device management, it started off very clunky, it started off very awkward to put in. It's now got much more sophisticated, it's easier to set up your policies and whereas it's easier to get a handle on what you're doing. One of the areas where we have an interesting approach is that we don't actually provide, we don't give phone handsets to our staff members. We don't consume the phone. Yeah, kind of, but you actually make a contribution towards it, so it's yours. You have ownership on it. And therefore we have a bring your own device scenario from the very beginning. And that's always been one of the challenges, is that we look at the data and try to come out. It's not about the device, it's not really about the apps. People want to be able to do Facebook, they want to do LinkedIn, they want to do all the stuff that you can do on now the smartphone. 2 years back we were more on a laptop, but now it's on the smartphone. We want people to be able to do that, and yet do their sharing files, use the email on the device. So we tend to be segregated to do that. We just look at the data. We take any of our customers, when you're working through this, any of our partners, we focus on the data. Protecting your data, you try and segregate the corporate from the personal, otherwise you can't really allow people the freedom to do whatever they want. And obviously our corporate culture is, it's good to use your handset for whatever you want, it's good to use a smartphone any way you like, try it out and try new things. We're rolling out an initiative at the moment where we're using something like Gamma and the Office 365, we're trying to see how can we do this and how can we do it in a manner where we're not exposing our data. So we're starting off with a gentle trial where it's a complete open tool set. This is in the UK headquarters. But we're limiting the data that goes in there so that we don't expose ourselves to securities as well. It's an ongoing challenge, but I suppose the short answer is that make sure you have some mobile device monitoring capabilities if you have data like that.
Very good. Okay. And coming back to Eire, to Chris, you mentioned customer satisfaction score and the auditor being your friend, but now that you've had some experience of going through the whole process, can you maybe help some of the people that are out there who are trying to deliver services in terms of how the auditor helped you and help you deliver on the normal business goals that you have?
I suppose with the auditor coming in for the audit, and one is coming up in May for us very soon, is that they take a different angle in terms of looking at your business. So I suppose a recent one that we were made aware of in relation to an OFI was, I suppose, with the recent impact on DDoS attacks, we were asked to consider in terms of how would we manage the PR and communication around security incidents at a group level, whereby a hosted customer had an intrusion on their network which occurred within our data center. So the incident wasn't necessarily within our own data center. We weren't necessarily responsible for the occurrence of the incident. But obviously with the Air brand and the national awareness that it has, is that, you know, as with any data center, as soon as the name is mentioned, there's an association that you have a responsibility, or that, you know, people may even worse think that you're the root cause of the actual incident. So what it did is it helped us to review our major incident management process, and how our liaison managers during the major incident management process work with our PR company in order to control the message out to the general public about how we're managing the incident, what the impact is, and the steps that we're taking to resolve it. So that's something that I suppose when you're looking from internally from a business point of view or from a technical point of view, you may not necessarily consider straight off the bat. So that's something that has, I suppose, that's just one element of the things that the auditor will look at, and he looks at it objectively. Whereas when we internally look at things, we always, it's your natural resolve to kind of look for reasons why that's happened. You know, that's happened because of that, that's fine. Whereas the auditor will poke a hole and ask you to, how are you going to fill that hole? So that's one learning that we've had.
Very good. And talking to John, just in terms of looking at this whole area and the resourcing and, you know, the value add that comes from audits, etc. But what sort of changes have you seen at C-suite level, right, in terms of resourcing and their approach to the whole area of security?
Well, I think there's been a sign of sea change in the last 18 months in terms of visibility of security within the organisation. I think if you went back 4 years ago, IT security was responsible for the IT department, and you did what you had to do, and you fought for money, and you scraped together what you needed to do to manage the situation. I think because of the publicity associated with the major breaches, and the fact that it's become a bit more broad-based, in the fact that so many organisations now are being hit, that it's becoming aware to the C-level that they need to do something about this. And the consequences they are also aware is that the brand damage and the costs can be enormous. So we're definitely seeing a change. I think to a certain extent that's a double-edged sword, in fact, because as C-level become more aware of it, they obviously want something to be done about it. C-level generally talk about, you know, guarantees, and in this world we know certainly in air security there's no guarantees. But what we do also notice is that you also have to have the tools to be able to show them the effects that the results you're getting by the increased budget. So we're seeing a lot of our organisations looking at how they report back, how they measure the success of their initiatives, and how they get that message back up to C-level. So I think again it's a double-edged sword in terms of their awareness.
Okay, very good. And just Gary, in terms of, you talk about hosts in Ireland and, you know, bringing these medium-sized companies here, but you also talked about, and you've heard some of the other speakers talk about the shortage of resources. Just, do you have any examples of how people are meeting those kind of challenges in terms of getting the resources necessary to manage data here?
An easy question. Look, talent is a global challenge. There's 1 million, even in the data security side. There's, I think, 5 million in the data scientist side. So that's the opportunity that many of the startups are leveraging off, where they're using artificial intelligence to ultimately get rid of the people elements. So the smarter get smarter, and the less smart continue to do the service. So there is no easy fix to it. What Host in Ireland has demonstrated, however, which is what I'd be condoning, is collaboration between competitors. So we would have, for instance, the fiercest of competitors all going out to the world as Host in Ireland. Guys, this was an equivalent, it will be O2, Air, Vodafone, and all them going out and dropping their individual brands. That's what Digital Realty, CIX, Equinix, Interaction, who are the equivalent, go. And that's where you start to actually get the view, oh, that's a place I'd like to go and live. That's a place I'd like to go and work with. Because it's the old Tony O'Reilly, right? Irish butter was always brilliant, always. But it was not, he decided to put a gold bar on it, that every dairy farmer in the country benefited. That's what you have to do. There's way too many little fiefdoms in Ireland still. You can say this because it's an Irish crowd. Collaborate. Consistent message. You know, Cork, Limerick, Galway, Dublin. When you're up in a helicopter looking, you don't give a shit. You just see 3 hours that way and 4 hours that way. And if the message going out is positive, guess what? At least you get an opportunity. But the talent thing is nothing unique to Ireland. It's a global challenge.
Very good.
Just at one point in terms of that, the same can be said in terms of security threats and sharing of security information. All the security vendors have their own threat feeds or their own intelligence areas, and only now are we beginning to see collaboration between them, sharing of data, sharing of threat information, so that we can be ahead of the bad guys. Because the bad guys share information all the time. They buy, sell, and share information. And if we're going to be ahead of them, we also, as the good guys, have to share information. And we've got to be more open about our breaches and the attacks we're under. And I think the critical issue is not that you get a breach or that you have a breach, it's how you respond to that breach is where you can differentiate yourself.
Very good. And Bruce, feel free to comment on the previous questions, but one of the questions I just wanted to ask you was, in terms of the practical application, what tools did Vodafone use to actually deliver on the 27,000?
Tools question is one that's always an important one, because documents sitting in folders somewhere will virtually just very quickly completely useless and counterproductive. In fact, you think you're okay, your order comes in and looks okay, and if you want to play that game, then you can achieve a level of compliance, but it's not really this. So one of the things that we do is try to use, we have one of our local IT team, which is just a customized version of SharePoint, basically. So SharePoint, when implemented, particularly the most recent one, they're self-managed, so I manage the SharePoint for about 20,000, 27,000. It means I can access the documents very quickly, very simply to the entire organization, so 1,300 people, and whatever they are. We obviously have an extra bit of people in India and Egypt and whatever else. And the way we operate, as an example, I'm going to go for Ireland and my username as a variable of we have the same for our Egyptian and Indian teams. If they work with Ireland, they have an account now. So I can do access to all that information using SharePoint. So we don't just use those folders, we create SharePoint databases. So building it's kind of like an access database, but it's embedded in SharePoint. It's a very easy way. You can access control, you can version control, you can do approval loops, approval processes, tracks, and all the types of access rails. And we can download it to spreadsheets, send the information around. So anyone can get access to a spreadsheet. So take on the update, standard feature, it pulls it in from SharePoint, and they have the latest version of the standard ability, like the report spreadsheets in there. All of our reports are all kept that way. So basically, it gives you quick, simple access to information. You don't have to remember where the SharePoint is necessarily. They don't have to know which of the hundreds of SharePoints you have. It is a problem with SharePoint in any organization. Everybody can create it if you let that way to happen. So we have hundreds, but you don't need to know. Pull up the spreadsheet that I gave you, click on refresh, you won't know what it is, refresh the same.
Very good.
One of our key tools. And that obviously the tool is only as good as the communication to the host and background. So that's the second process one we have to work. So that's the key tool.
Very good. Thank you very much. So there is some extra workshops out there on different topics. I think SharePoint is one of them. We're going to break for coffee now. I'd maybe give a shout out to our exhibitors. If you're out and about, please do call into them. You heard one or two names being shouted out to you by the various speakers, and those people are present on the stands. There is a competition from Zenobē. It's to win an iPad. I'd encourage you to do that, and indeed if there's any other competitions out there, if they make themselves known to us, we'd be happy to give them a plug. But I'd like to ask you now maybe to come back in about 15 to 20 minutes and ask you to show your appreciation to our speakers in traditional manner. Thank you very much.